Welcome to the AI argument. I'm here with my co-host Justin Collery. I'm Frank Prendergast, and I think it's fair to say, Justin, are we like horrendously disorganized for this week? We are full of AI news, but I think we got a little bit distracted. You had a very good reason for being distracted. I have no particularly good reason, but just before we came on, you were fielding calls from all your family because huge congratulations. Amazing. You got
Thank you. I'm
engaged, correct?
engaged. I'm engaged again.
Amazing.
Yes, I'm going to get married at some point. And
Fantastic.
so, yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a very happy time. And we're all very pleased, all 8 of us in this house.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. You actually, even though you had a very good reason to be distracted, you actually had a load of stuff to talk about today. But we'll kick off with everyone was freaking out because LinkedIn had opted everybody in to using their personal data for training their AI systems. So it turned out that there was a new page in the settings that nobody knew about, that if you went there, the toggle was switched to on. Yes, LinkedIn, you may use my data for training your AI systems. I immediately thought, wow, what? I can't believe they would do this when Facebook have just had their knuckles wrapped by the EU for the exact same thing. And so I went to look at the toggle and to turn it off. And there was no toggle for me because I'm in the EU. And they knew better than to get on the wrong side of the EU, which I think is fabulous.
Well, I think that's a bit naive, Frank, if I'm honest, because LinkedIn is a public website, right? I can sign up with an account and I can just go and scrape your details from LinkedIn. So I don't really need to have a toggle button in order to take all your data down and use it to train my AI. So good luck with that. That's
You
thing
ruin
number one.
everything. You ruin everything, Justin.
Problem number one. Problem number two is, I mean, it's LinkedIn, right? It's there to promote yourself. You're there. You want it to be public. If you wanted it to be private, Frank, what you should do is you should get a piece of paper and you should get a pen and you can write down whatever it is that you don't want the AI to know, and then you can throw it in the fire and it'll never get used to train anybody's model. So I mean, it's public data. That's why you put it on LinkedIn. You put it to promote yourself, to get yourself
You
out there, and you are
you make
contributing to the future of humanity by allowing it to happen. Except in the EU, because we're going to be a playground for the future where people go to look what it was like in the bygone eras.
you do make some fair points. However, were things like direct messages included in this data grab? I would assume they are, and I would not, and that is not public information. No, I'm not. I actually am not 100% sure what they were grabbing. The screenshots I saw, I wouldn't say they made it particularly clear what they were grabbing, but I'm assuming it's everything.
I don't know. Actually, I wouldn't make that assumption, and I would agree with you. Right, private messages. There could be all sorts of stuff, especially in LinkedIn and private messages, which I don't think I would have a problem with that. But your profile, your posts, your videos, this video here, absolutely, Microsoft, suck it up, take it all, because
I still think we should have the choice, though. I mean, you make a good point about, in an AI future, if somebody says to ChatGPT, for example, or well, in this case, whatever Microsoft AI that they have, if someone says, "Who's Frank Prendergast?" I actually do want the AI to know who Frank Prendergast is, but I would like some control over how it knows that and what data that it is taking. I mean, I was immediately reminded of the recent kind of furor. Was it Eric Schmidt? It was Eric Schmidt, wasn't it? Who was talking to a group of students in, where was it, Harvard or one of those places, and he basically said, "Look, the way Silicon Valley works is like just steal everything, copy everything, and hire a good legal team to sort it out later." And that, it very much reminded me of this, where it's like, we've opted you in automatically. We're taking all your stuff, and sure, if people freak out about it, we'll sort it out later. Which already might be happening, because I saw that some of my UK connections were saying that they had the toggle yesterday and now it's disappeared. So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you were to go back to the time of the printing press, anybody who was in charge or had power at the time didn't want the printing press to be released because it was a way for them to have control over the people. And the way that you make progress is by breaking rules and by doing something which maybe people who are powerful don't want you to do. So I think what Eric Schmidt was saying was that, and in fact, Sam Altman, he was in charge of Y Combinator for a number of years, and he had a question on the questionnaire to get into Y Combinator, and was basically asking you how bold you would be in order to achieve your aims. Now, I'm not saying that's okay. Actually, I'm not. But I do think it's interesting that if you want progress, people need to be a little bit bold. And this maybe is an instance of it being a little bit bold. But I've got much worse news for you, Frank.
Yeah, hit me.
So, okay, you're going to love this. Do you remember? You're about the same age as I am. Back in the late 70s, there was a nuclear accident in America. What was it called again? Three Mile Island, Frank. That's what it was called. Guess what?
Right. Yeah.
Do you remember that nuclear power station? Went kaboom somewhere in the late 70s. Didn't
I
quite go
actually,
kaboom, but you don't know about 3 Mile
I,
Island?
I actually don't. I don't remember 3 Mile Island.
Oh, wow. Well, about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years before the Russians did it properly in Chernobyl, there was an accident in a nuclear power station called 3 Mile Island. It wasn't a big accident, it was a small accident, right? It released
Right.
some radioactive material in a big cloud, but that was about it. It didn't go into full meltdown or anything. But they considered
Right.
this a danger. So they shut the nuclear power station down. That was back in the late 1970s. But good news this
Mm.
week, Frank. They're going to open it up again.
Right.
So Microsoft have struck a deal with a power company where this is going to be the first nuclear power station in the world ever to be restarted. We hope the Germans will learn something from this, and perhaps they might start up their nuclear power stations too. So they're in America. They're going to restart the nuclear power station in 3 Mile Island. It's going to generate, I think, just shy of half a gigawatt of power, so about 500
Mm.
megawatts. And all of this power is expected to come online sometime around 2027, 2028. And every single ounce of power from that newly recommissioned power station is going to be sold to Microsoft to power their AI data centers. Now,
Wow.
wow,
Interesting.
right. So I just thought it was kind of funny, to be honest with you, right? So when you're worried about your data, right, but you shouldn't be worried about, this is your freely available data, right, that you've given out for free on the internet. You're worrying about that. In the background, they're taking nuclear power stations, which before had little burps of radioactive material. And I'm totally fine with this as well, but they're firing those guys up again because there's going to be such an enormous demand for power over the certainly next 5 years. This won't be the first nuclear power station to get recommissioned. But if I was looking at things that were dangerous, I would be pointing at the nuclear power station and not the freely available public information on the internet.
That's I mean, that's really interesting. I don't follow, I don't follow power and energy stuff too closely at all, but I do just generally find it interesting that, nuclear power does not have a good doesn't have great PR, I suppose, in
Yeah.
our minds. And because I grew up, yeah, with Chernobyl on my mind, and the fear of Sellafield across the water when they opened that, particularly at the time when Chernobyl felt a lot, it felt very fresh in our minds. And I feel like, nuclear power has never gotten over that. And yet anyone that I talk to who is into power seems to think that nuclear power is our only way forward until something new is invented or developed.
Well,
So it's interesting that AI might be the thing that kind of gains it popularity again.
Well, I mean, it certainly will. So just this week, Microsoft, what were the three names of the companies? There was Microsoft, BlackRock, and the UAE. Interestingly, the UAE, because they have a whole lot of oil, but they signed a partnership for $100 billion. And they're going to use that $100 billion to build data centers for sure, but also lots of nuclear power centers in order to power those enormous data centers that they're planning to build. So nuclear power is going to be a big part of the future of AI and how we power all of these enormous clusters of computers.
Because I saw that about the partnership and about the data centers, but I completely missed any reference to nuclear power in there when I was reading it.
People get very uppity when you talk about nuclear power, and obviously there is nuclear waste which we have to deal with. But other than that, it's pretty much carbon neutral. But I did have a plan, Frank. Do you want to hear my plan?
Of course, I want to hear your plan.
So you know the way, right? We've got Southern Ireland and we've got Northern Ireland, right? And if you're going to build a nuclear power station in Ireland, where would you put it? Right. But if you look at the border that goes between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, it's not a straight line. It's not like Africa. It's very, very sort of in and out and wiggly
Mm.
and stuff like that. So you put a wiggle that goes into Northern Ireland and you stick the nuclear power station just right there. So it's basically in Northern Ireland, but it's not. and who's going to argue with that? You know.
And you think that would protect us? You think?
No, I'm joking, of course. I actually, I don't know. I think there's been a lot of work done by the Chinese on nuclear power stations to make them much safer now. And you can build very small nuclear power stations. They're powered by little round nuclear balls.
Oh, we'll just put AI. We'll just put AI in charge of them. They'll be fine.
Again, you know, I see a future where at some point the human is the weakest link, but you know, we'll get there. We're not quite there yet. But yeah, look at Frank. There we go. I was entertained by the story of people getting upset about LinkedIn, and I was thinking to myself, have they considered where the power is going to come from to power the computers which are taking your data from LinkedIn? Because that's far more dangerous than the actual data they're taking. But there it is. So we have it.
Another story that I know you must have absolutely loved. I'd say you were rubbing your hands together when you saw it, thinking, "I'm definitely bringing this up on the AI argument." Was Patrick Collison, among others, weighing in on the fact that the EU needs to sort itself out in terms of its regulation and start supporting AI innovation.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the only one as well. There was a whole tranche of entrepreneurs and big businesses and so
one of these
on.
open letters, wasn't it, with signed by
it was,
and this lots of big tech companies signing, I believe.
Yep, absolutely. A number of the big companies, and they were making the same points, which is we need regulation, but we also need power, we need infrastructure. You know, the same sort of plan. And the quotes, I mean, that from that article was, you know, you can choose to reassert the principle of harmonization and try and whatever they go on about that, or you can continue to reject progress, contradict the ambitions of the single market, and watch the rest of the world build technologies that Europeans will not have access to. And that's exactly what's happening at the moment. So you've got Apple releasing their AI products, except in Europe. You've got LinkedIn and Microsoft stealing everybody's data, except in Europe. You know,
Meta not rolling out stuff in Europe. But I mean, you know, I think so. You'll probably be surprised to hear. I think this is good. I think this open letter is a good thing. Weirdly, because I support the EU's approach, and I think that it was good to get out ahead of this and put together regulation and start thinking about like where we're headed. And I think it was very forward thinking. I think it was the right thing to do. But as I've said before on this show, it doesn't mean they got it right. And you know, they were highly unlikely to get it right. So now we're having an even more robust conversation, and more people are getting involved. Tech is pushing back, and you know, there's going to be somewhere in the middle, because I don't, you know, the statement that I think that the statement that they made in the open letter is a little bit alarmist. I think there's some truth in it, but I think they're hyping up their own position basically. And I think that with this robust discussion, we will end up at a place where we have regulation that makes sense. And you know, I am not, you know, I'm not a legal specialist. I don't know if where we are right now is actually genuinely going to hamper development to the level that they say it's going to. There's huge disagreements among experts on that. But I think that now that we're having this robust discussion, hopefully we will end up in a place that makes sense.
I can put your mind at rest. Okay, so the last point you make about has it put a brake on any sort of, you know, look, how many AI companies are there in Europe? How many do you think? Name them.
I don't know.
Easy. There's only one. There's only one. Well, yes, correct. The French one. That's the only AI company. How many are there in America? You mean you couldn't count them on both hands and your toes? Like there's more. There's, you know.
But you can't blame regulation for that because, I mean, it's too early. That was the case before EU regulations were a thing at all.
I think I don't well, I don't fully agree, right? So that's a fair point, right? There's always been, America in many respects has won the internet age, right? There's always been more capital and more investment and more innovation when it comes from America. But then you're going back to Eric Schmidt and how did that come about? And I mean, even if you go back to, you know, to use an analogy, right? If you go back to the time of the birth of the internet when you had Napster and all of those types of things, and the film industry and the music industry was going crazy, saying, "Oh, you're stealing all our products," and blah 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 blah. But and out of that, so that's what Eric Schmidt means when he says, "Look at we take stuff and whatever." That's all been regulated out of it now, and not regulated, but rules have grown up. So they act first, they break something, they create the technology, and then they figure out how to regulate it. Where in Europe, it seems like they've just regulated it, and
Yeah, but I think it that opens up a whole kind of philosophical question that there's no way we can get to the bottom of it today, but it does open that question of, does the ends justify the means? It's because, let's face it, AI has been built this way. It has been built on that very premise of like, yeah, just steal everything, just hoover it all up. Who cares if it's legal? We'll get the legal teams to figure it out later. Now the courts are trying to figure out, was it legal? And we don't really have any meaningful rulings on any of those cases yet. So we're still in limbo as to whether it was legal. But the horse has kind of bolted anyway. They've done it. They did it. We have AI. And, so is that a good thing? Is it, can you,
yes,
and you could, but you could argue that, like, okay, even if, I mean, a lot of people feel very, very, very hard done by from this. And I understand those feelings. And if we allow this kind of methodology to continue, how far can it go? How far can big tech take it that they can just ignore the law? And at which law do we say, okay, you've gone too far? And
more. Good news, Frank, this week on that
yes.
front. So we had Helen Toner, and you may remember Helen Toner used to be a board member of OpenAI until she and a number of others tried to get rid of Sam Altman, and she was in front of the Senate this week talking about AI regulation and how to resolve exactly, because these are fair issues that you raise. And amazingly, because I would have given Helen Toner kind of a hard time in the past, maybe seriously, maybe jokingly, but she nearly destroyed a company which I hope is going to create AGI. So people feel passionately about this sort of thing. She had a number of principles about how to regulate AI, and I'll list them for you because I think they're quite good. One, she said, set transparency requirements. I think that's a totally reasonable thing to do, right? Tell us what you're doing. I'd be totally up for that. Fund the development of AI measurement and safety science. Now, if the European Union wants to do something truly positive, because a really interesting thing, if you notice, is if you Andrei Karpathy, one of the the founders of Ilyas Stutzker, and these people, have you listened to them? They're not American. Like, these people are Europeans. Right? There's an enormous number of incredibly brilliant European scientists that have contributed to this field. And if we wanted to contribute, why not fund research into this area? So at least we're creating the brains, if not the companies, that go and grow. So I think that's a great idea. Support the development of third-party audit systems. That's a really good idea too. Again, something that the Europeans, not government control, but companies who audit the AI companies. I mean, that's something I think we could all get behind. Bolster whistleblower protections. I don't see any problem with that. Increase technical expertise in the government. Yes, absolutely, do that. Clarify how liability for AI will be dealt with in the courts. Again, I mean, these are all. I actually was amazed when I read this, because to me that sounds like a very reasonable playbook, and maybe Helen Toner was the right person in the wrong place. So she was in OpenAI, and that whole thing nearly fell apart. But actually, these suggestions are very positive and very good, and maybe she should be in the regulatory side, working for the government, rather than she should be a hound rather than a horse or whatever that particular saying
Sure.
is.
Yeah,
Poacher come gamekeeper. She should be the gamekeeper, not the poacher.
sure. It makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they were great suggestions, and I hope. But I mean, to me, a lot of them, I think I think over here, I think in the EU, and I think even in Ireland, we are doing pretty good work along those lines. I think it's amazing that Ireland has an AI council advising the government. And so I think we're probably making better steps over here than they are in the US in terms of safety and regulation and everything that she outlined.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but there's just
No,
one
that was
thing
it.
that we're doing. There's one thing that we're doing badly that we were doing well, and we've just started doing it. So up until because Ireland is the headquarters for most of these big tech companies, up until now, the data protection commissioner used to be the one that used to give the rulings, let's say on the LinkedIn thing, should the data be included or not included. And
Mm,
they're now punting all of those decisions over to Europe rather than making the decision quickly here in Ireland. And so when you come back to the Patrick Collison's thing about
right.
regulatory certainty, that creates uncertainty. So before you could just go to the Irish regulator and say, I want to get all of Frank Prendergast's data, including all his private text messages and everything else that he doesn't even know we know about him. We want to use that. We want to use that in our trading data. Before the Irish data commissioner would say, no, 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 you're not allowed to do that, right? Or yes, but at least it's a quick answer and it's a certain answer.
Sure.
Whereas now they don't have that, right? It goes over to Europe and it gets too big and it takes too long and stuff like that. So that's definitely something that I think can be addressed. There was another
Sure.
interesting thing. What's your thoughts on this, right? So you're a favor, I presume, of the Californian bill. It's very similar to the European one to do with training size model. If a model gets bigger than a certain amount of computer, requires more than how many teraflops, that then it becomes a model of interest and it has to be registered and all that sort of stuff. You're in favor of that, are you?
I mean, so in general, I am in favor of kind of like I was saying earlier about like trying to think ahead here and put measures in place. I'm guessing you're walking me into a lovely trap here. I'm assuming you're walking me into the trap where we now are seeing completely different ways of maximizing what AI can do, and therefore can we regulate if it's shifting sands constantly. And yes, I think it's an issue, but I think it would be a huge mistake to try to stop regulating on the basis that things could change. I think we have to just regulate with what we know and what we have in front of us, and amend them as things change, or
But I think
try to get a handle on how things are going to change and try to be forward thinking enough that we figure out how to regulate for something that changes so rapidly.
I'd fall back on one of Helen Toner's points, which was to, increase technical competency within the government. And
Mm,
what I would say is that in an area like AI, right, the paradigms are changing and they will change faster and faster. So, we now have a new paradigm. The regulations make no sense, right? It doesn't matter anymore. I can increase the amount of data processing that I do after the fact rather than before. So I can create a model which is way more powerful than what you envisaged with way less compute upfront, so you're not going to regulate it. So it's making an ass out of the law, right? And and it's always going to be that way because in another year or two, there's going to be another paradigm shift, and it's going to change in ways that haven't. I mean, if the government was able to predict how it would change, then they'd be off making AI models because they'd make a fortune rather than governing people, which is what they really should be doing. And that's kind of why I like Helen Toner's points,
yeah,
because they're not about regulating; they're about understanding, and they're about warning, and they're about building proficiency, and they're about transparency, and they're about that seems to me, we should be developing that type of environment rather than an environment which is no, you can't do that, which I don't think will work anyway.
so let's hit a couple of fun things before we wrap up.
Yes.
Very quickly, runway, the kind of AI video generating platform, they released video to video AI, which sounds weird, but basically, you know, right now you've got text to video, which is kind of, it's kind of okay. Then you've got image to video, where if you create an image first, you can then add movement to it with AI. And now they've got video to video. So the problem with like text to video or image to video is it's quite difficult to control. Whereas if I can now take a video of you walking across the street, and then I can prompt it to say, great, you know, keep all this movement. This is how I want the movement to be, but now I want it to be an alien walking across Mars. So yeah, it looks absolutely incredible, and just gives you much more control over the movement.
How long, Frank, do you think it's going to be? Because this is most certainly in your area, right? How long is it going to be before we really start to see this stuff in movies, actual movies that I can go into the cinema and watch?
Honestly, I have no idea. I wish I knew. I don't know, because it seems, you know, it seems to be progressing at a phenomenal pace. But as with all things AI, you never know when you're just going to hit that wall. So like, it's not ready. It's not ready for Hollywood yet. And is it like, I just don't know. This is what I find amazing about AI. It's like, is it tomorrow? Is it around the corner? Does someone pop up tomorrow and say, oh, we've done it. Here you go. Hollywood grade. Pop it in your movie. Or, you know, do they just say, oh no, that was it. Actually, that was as far as it was able to be taken. I have absolutely no idea. But it's fascinating.
I'm really looking forward to it, because the AI videos, the ones that I see, are very trippy and they're kind of horror movie-ish and whatever. And we're coming into Halloween season, and I think we're not quite there yet with getting a horror movie made by AI. But I totally think that this time next year, I think it'll be possible, and I think they'll be awesome. I had one. Did you see it? What was it called? Death and Breakfast. It was called. It was made by a company, Howlu AI and Minimax. It was brilliant.
Dead and breakfast, like bed and breakfast. Yeah. Like they were very smart, and this is what I mean about it's like, it's maybe not ready for Hollywood, but they were very smart because they created like an ad. So it was like an ad for a bed and breakfast, which was this kind of death house. And because it's an ad, it's all quick shots. So you don't need continuity of character. You don't need any of the stuff that AI can't do well right now. You just need a sequence of scenes that are each just a couple of seconds long. Perfect for AI, absolutely perfect. And I think they're the people the people who can figure out what are the strengths of AI and how can I leverage the strengths right now. They're the people who are doing good stuff right now.
Do you know what? I think that's true. That's a really good point, and I think it's true in every domain. Exactly what you said there is true in every domain. It's the people who can learn how to leverage it to the most and lean into its strengths the most. That's a really powerful skill right now.
Yeah. Let's finish with AI me. So you brought my attention to Fish Audio. Is that what it's called? Fish Audio? That seems weird, but I think that is the name. But they came up with a new instant AI cloner, instant AI voice cloner.
Let's give it a go.
And it is it's open source. And
can we remind ourselves before you play this, the promise of this particular open source model? Because this, I think, was what was getting you worried last week. So before we hear the clip, which I'm sure is going to be amazing, what this model was promising was that it could clone anybody's voice with 10 seconds of audio. And that was a frightening prospect, because think of what you could do.
And I'm really impressed with things like the changes in speed of the voice, the kind of changes in pitch. There's nice pauses built in. But my test is always, can it handle my accent? So I took a little clip from a previous episode. So we'll start with my own voice, and then it'll move into the AI voice. So let's have a listen. So this is my voice to begin with. But for most people, I think they're going to be disappointed, because this thing is its strength is reasoning, and even more specifically, they're saying its strength is reasoning in maths, coding, and science. So
When did the switch happen, Frank?
you know, that's something. That's an interesting point, because I would love to know, did everybody listening or watching to this, did everybody like hear, well, not watching because I showed it, but everybody listening, did everybody really clearly hear the line? Because to me, it's really obvious, because obviously I'm familiar with my own voice. But I did a test previously with an AI voice clone, and I put it up on LinkedIn. And I'd say it was 50-50. 50% of people were like, oh yeah, it's completely different. It's giving you a UK accent. And 50% of people were like, yeah, that sounds like you. What are you talking about? That's your voice. So
it's like the dress. It's like the dress, isn't it? You know, some people see blue and some people see gray. It's the same.
I wonder, does it depend on like how familiar you are with an Irish accent or with a Cork accent, or, you know, but to me anyway, Fish Audio, no, still not able to handle my strange hybrid Cork Irish accent, my odd.
It makes you sound better though, Frank. Let's be honest.
Let's, you know, I'm thinking of, I think I might use it on Zoom calls from now on.
Yeah.
I'll just run everything through it.
After listening to it very carefully there, right? Later on this evening when you're bored, I would do a little test on that piece of audio. It did make you sound a bit English, right? But also the noticeable thing was your voice dropped. I would run that audio, the cloned one, at 1.25 to bring it up a bit, and then listen.
I've been very disappointed at not being able to get a voice clone, or at least an instant voice clone. Now you can get, you know, higher level voice clones that you can train on like 20 hours of your voice or something, but I don't really have, unless I went and I cut you out of all of our podcasts, I don't have 20 hours of my voice. So far I've been very, very disappointed. So Marcy had a brilliant idea. She said, well, why don't you just start speaking like the AI voice?
It's a great idea.
And then boom.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
I think you see the cognitive dissonance here, Frank, that for a man who's very worried about Microsoft cloning you in our all concrete AI in the future and stealing your data from LinkedIn, you're freely giving away your voice, and you're an actor after all, and you're freely giving away your voice to these, and you're disappointed when you don't get cloned.
I did hesitate before making this clone. I hesitate before doing all these things, but my curiosity always gets the better of me. It was the same with the AI clone, like, you know, giving my likeness to HeyGen to create an AI video clone, which was the visual there with the voice. Yeah, I hesitate, but then my curiosity gets the better of me. I'm just like, I want the cool toy, I'll go for it. But at least I'm making that decision. It's a conscious decision. I want that toggle. I want that little toggle, and I want to have to opt in, not opt out.
Well, on that bombshell, Frank, a pleasure as always. And I hope to speak to you and a whole room of yous next week. And
and I will be talking to you like this, Justin, from now on.
Very good. In fact, if we both come on with slightly West Brit accents, the audience will know exactly what's happened.
See you next week.
Pleasure as always, Frank. We talk to you.